Welcome back to Brilliant Fishing. Today we have got a special guest with us today from the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission, and we're going to talk crappie fishing. We're going to get in the weeds today. Well, maybe not in the weeds, the lake. We're going to talk about
a little bit of weeds.
The weeds. Well, we're going to talk about the crappie populations, the biology specifically of the crappie populations, and we're going to and that's a lot to talk about, but we're going to kind of try to key in on the biology of the crappie in the Yadkin chain and the Catawba chain. And we've been collecting some questions from anglers. Inquiring minds want to know, a lot of things about the biology of the black and the white crappie in those lakes. So I want to introduce to you today Troy Thompson. And Troy is with us today. Now, Troy, tell us your official title. I don't want to mess this up. But you are?
I'm a fisheries biologist.
Okay.
For the Wildlife Commission. And,
okay.
District 6, which we have 9 districts, but it's 10 county of South Central Piedmont. So we have the Yadkin chain. We started Tomolex. It's a subset. It's off of Abbott's Creek. Mm-hmm. And then we have Catawba from Lake Norman down to the state line. Okay. So it's a lot of water.
That would be a lot of water.
It's a lot of water for 2 biologists to cover.
That would be a bunch.
3 species we mainly focus on.
Okay.
Stripers and crappies and largemouth bass.
Okay.
Now Alabama bass too. But.
Right. Okay. So before we kind of get into all the biology stuff, if you want to take a minute, just tell us, how did you get started in this field? What led you to pursue this type of thing as a career?
Well, I always loved hunting and fishing. I did a lot of that growing up, and my grandpa was a big influence on me. And I like nothing more than to do that. So, and I like working on old cars and stuff, but that's beside the point. But what really got me into this was one of those, those aptitude tests you take.
Right.
I was probably in 8th or 9th grade.
Okay.
And I, did the whole thing, and they said, fisheries or wildlife biologists, and maybe forestry. That's what I came up as. And I went, well, I like biology, but I didn't know there were jobs for fish and wildlife. I only know about game wardens.
Right.
So it was like opened my eyes.
Yeah.
I said, dang, that's what I'm going to do. So it kind of set my path right then. Because when you're a young man, you're sort of worry about what you're going to end up doing with your life. And I thought, well, this will be perfect. So I did everything towards that. Went to college, and here we are. Well, I guess I went to Virginia Tech. I'm from Virginia, so Martinsville area, not too far, up 220, across
up in the mountains. Then, that's a beautiful area.
Hills,
it's a great area.
Graduated from there and got a job working. Well, I did my first fish work probably in 1997 at an undergraduate research project for one of the major professors up there. Okay. So I've been doing it a while. Worked for VDGIF, Department of Game and Inland Fisheries there.
Cool.
For several years, just because I wanted a break from school, but it was also very fun. The only problem is that it wasn't full-time job. It was full-time but no benefits, so they cut you loose towards the end of the year. But I would use that month to go deer hunting, so that was my hunting season.
That's kind of a win right there.
That's I had me a little house rented in the country and tons of land around me. It was awesome, but
that's fun.
And I was living cheap, but I realized I'm not even saving any money at all, so I can't afford to do much. So I thought I need to go back to school, which was something you had to do to get this job because there's so much competition and so few jobs. Right. So they didn't tell me that when I first went to Virginia Tech. By the way, that you would need a master's degree. But so I went to Florida. Worked down there a couple of years and did my thesis on largemouth bass movements.
Really?
Telemetry study,
Oh, wow.
So that was pretty cool. And then came up here and been up here 17 years now.
So you got like a wide variety of experiences.
Yeah, I learned a lot about aquatic vegetation, things like that in Florida.
So tell me a little bit about, so like your job now, you said you're sort of keeping track of those different populations. You mentioned stripers, hybrids, crappie, largemouth.
Yep.
But what's a typical day for you look like, or what kind of?
Yep. So we're primarily sport fish. We have non-game biologists as well, but that's not me. And we do a lot of habitat work, getting more into that, and technical guidance. So it's not just sport fish management. So people have ponds and or just general fishing questions. They come to us, and actually that's one of the parts of my job I enjoy the most, just helping, interacting with the anglers. But so far as the fish work, though, so it's based mostly on sampling the populations to see how they get the status of them and see how they're doing. Typically start in the spring with bass, largemouth bass over here, and that's electrofishing, which, if y'all are familiar, it's a 16, 18 foot boat, the big 7,000 watt generator, and
zap them.
Probes, it zaps the fish, and they come up within an area about the size of this room. I don't know, 20 square feet, 20 foot diameter circle, let's say. Beauty is it doesn't really hurt the fish. It just stuns them enough to put them in the live well. So we can get length and weight data and things like that. And for the ones we don't get age data, we can turn them right back loose. It doesn't hurt them at all. So, and then in the fall we do crappies. So we have 4 lakes to do this fall.
Now you don't electrofish for those, right?
I did a study in 2011 at Tuckertown where I electrofished for them concurrently with the trap netting in the fall, and it worked pretty good. It was pretty even. Then I tried it at Tillery the next year, and it didn't work at all.
Really?
So I found that trap netting is just more consistent.
It
really does give a pretty good sample. Fairly representative. If y'all, trap net's like a big minnow trap. Hoops are like 30 inches and 10 foot. And we set them off the shore, usually on points, and there's a lead panel. So the idea is the fish hits that panel and bumps in and gets caught up in the trap. And does a great job. I probably misses some of the largest fish that might be offshore that don't come in. And it's a passive gear, so we're not chasing the fish. It depends on the fish finding it and coming in.
Right.
But then we use gill nets for striped bass, and that's in December, January time frame. And there's just straightforward diamond-shaped panels. The fish swims in and gets stuck. There's a lot of bycatch with that, so that's one of the problems with striper sampling. That we catch a ton of carp and catfish and things like that we don't really want. And it's
I assume with the gill netting too, that's probably like the sample that you catch is like it dies, doesn't it? So like you kind of take it. It's pretty rough.
Yeah.
There's
especially with stripers, way to do that, unless they catch them within an hour or two. But catfish are tougher. You know how tough catfish are.
They are tough. That's
Sometimes my grandpa would catch some. He lived in Patrick County. We fished on Philpott and be half-hour away, and I guess I shouldn't be saying this, but the fish would still be alive. He'd just have them in the back of the truck. He'd still be alive when we got home.
Yeah, they make it a long time.
Yeah, they're tough as nails.
Well, let's start moving into like some of your findings. As far as the crappie biology. So, and I guess let's just start with this. What can you tell us that maybe anglers would find useful or interesting about the current like health of the crappie populations, up and down the Yadkin and Catawba?
That's a good question, and is mostly contingent on productivity of the water. So and I'll just start at the top. It's Tom Licks for us. It's on the Abbott's Creek, runs into High Rock.
Right.
And it's probably the most productive water that we have.
Really?
Yeah, and it produces an insane amount of crabbies. Sometimes we catch over 1,000 in 2 nights.
Really? Wow.
Just ridiculous amounts of fish. Now, when you get that many fish, they usually have problems with growth.
Okay,
So
like a stunted population.
Population, which is small fish. So it's not always the best situation. Although, even when stunted populations, there's a few fish that get past that bottleneck. And usually the bottleneck's about the time they're switching to fish, switching to piscivory from eating zooplankton and whatnot. And that's about 6 inches.
Okay.
And they really get constricted there in a 6 to 8 inch range. But a few get through there, they just happen to eat well and stay on top of things. Mm-hmm. And those grow awesome. They're, I mean, they kind of almost turn into a bass-like fish.
Okay.
So even in Tom Licks, they get reports of 3-4 pound crabbies.
Really? Wow.
So, and then High Rock's similar, but a little less productive. Okay. Probably, I'm going based on the numbers of fish we catch here. Okay. Tuckertown's very similar to High Rock. Mm-hmm. They both tend to stunt. And then downstream of that, I'm going to say this is the sweet spot for crabbies is Baden Lake and Tillery. It's where you get good numbers and good sizes. Okay. So it's like a good situation. Bluet Falls is below that. It's kind of the red-headed stepchild of our lakes. Okay. I don't know. It's probably to do with the flow regime. We kind of focus more on the downstream because there's anadromous fish and the robust red horse. I don't know if you know about that. Yeah, pretty rare fish. So they try to have the best flows downstream, which maybe it's not the best upstream, so the water can fluctuate. Okay. For whatever reason, crappies and bass, they just don't have great recruitment, and that's producing a new year of class of fish. They don't seem to recruit very well at all. Okay. But what crappies do grow in Bluet are they're the fastest growing in the district, but they're pretty sparse, I guess. Okay. And that's the reason. Crappies are real sensitive to competition, which the whole stunting thing, it all plays in. Okay. Growth and stunting and productivity are all linked. So then we move over to the Catawba and Lake Norman. Growth's decent there, but it's not a large crappie population. We don't catch a lot over there, and it's but yeah, Norman's unique just because it's so big. But it's kind of water, and people that know how to find crappies there. But for the most part, it's not like you can just go out and catch a ton of them. Mountain Island is probably our poorest lake. It's really It's Lake Norman filtered, what I like to call it. Lake Norman's clean as can be. Nutrient wise. So Mountain Island's even less productivity, and it's got there's a few diehard crappie anglers there, but it just doesn't produce much. Right. Okay. And Wiley used to be sort of similar, but it was better. It was the best of the three. But here lately, the last couple of surveys, it's dang if it's not getting a little towards stunting. Really? Yeah, the last one we did, we caught a ton of fish, and a lot of them were smaller and not really growing as well as they should for their ages. Okay. And I forgot to mention white crappies. Okay. They, in my opinion, they seem to be really related to productivity too, where they excel productivity and maybe turbidity. It seems like they do better. Okay. In muddier situations, I'm not sure. Okay. They're not native here. They're Mississippi fish, but Mississippi drainage, I guess I should say. Okay. But so we have the highest populations in Tom Licks.
Okay.
The most productive and a lot of times the most stained. If you ever fish Tomalix,
I have not fished Tomalix.
When it gets muddy, it stays muddy for months.
Really?
Yep. And then High Rock's got a little bit less, or quite a bit less whites. And then Tomalix even less. And then they're just rare everywhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've caught more, on High Rock than, other places, but okay.
And we get some hybrids too at High Rock. I've noticed that.
Yeah,
Hybrids
I've heard
between
about
black
that.
and whites. You can, if you look at enough of them, you can kind of tell.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, as anglers, we're doing a casual visual inspection, and the whites we see kind of see the bars down the sides, and the blacks you don't.
Right.
I'm not usually one to sit there and count the spines, but is that when you're looking at a hybrid, you just sort of eyeballing it? What kind of clues are you looking
It's
for?
just kind of in between.
So it sort of has the bars, sort of doesn't.
Spines and maybe a little. One tell on whites to me too is they got this kind of yellowish green background cast,
Oh, okay.
and sometimes you'll see that on a hybrid with the black. And whites seem to have a longer face too.
Yeah. Yeah, the shape of their
they're a little
snout's
more.
a little different.
Yeah,
It's probably not called a
you're
snout.
just looking at them.
Okay. Well, I wanted to circle back around for a minute to the stunting thing, because I don't think a lot of folks maybe understand, what that is. Why? So can you maybe go through that a little bit, and like the whole thing about you talked about the bottleneck, and the switching food sources. I know you and I talked over the phone about this, and I thought this was really interesting. So, anything you could kind of explain about that?
Biggest things that causes stunting is excessive recruitment too, and that seems to happen in the most productive waters. That is, they produce a lot of fish every year, and this year, and that's when it starts stacking up.
Okay.
And then you got a big year class that's not growing well, and let's say they're only 6 or 7 inches after a year, and then you put another big year class coming up. Well, they're competing with each other because they're still eating zooplankton.
Okay.
So they're competing with each other.
Right.
And it just kind of magnifies from there. So really the best situation would be to somehow reduce the numbers of fish.
Okay.
So all we can do is promote harvest in those situations. Like, please, I know you probably don't want to take 7-inch fish, but if you're helping the fishery,
it really does help the population.
Yeah, take them.
Yeah, I think, that's interesting. We think about, with a lot of different fisheries, trying to improve the recruitment, especially your saltwater inshore species. You got, the whole speckled trout, release them if they're over 20 inches, and slot limit on red drum, because we want the breeding stock protected and all this kind of stuff. But crappie, whole different thing, right?
When it's really productive waters, it's almost like boiling water. You kind of want to put a damper on it somewhat, just to kind of dial it back, because too much, you get the quantity, but you don't get the quality,
right?
Because of the competition. And we do see that in the growth of the fish when we're looking at their length at age. If there's a big year class, you could see it. Oh, well, this year class is 2 inches smaller than a normal good year. So they're competing with each other, so they're not growing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one interesting one, and this was at Tuckertown, but a lot of times they never recover from the stun, like a certain year class.
Really?
We had a year class, I think it was 2008 year class, so we went there in 2010, and this year class was a big one, and they were not growing well. 6, I think they were 7 inches. Didn't think, Tuckertown's kind of like that, nothing special. Went back 2013, so these fish are 5 years old now, and that's getting old. That's getting old for a crappie.
Yeah.
And we still caught a lot of them. And at this point, they had made it up to 8 inches in 5 years.
5 years old.
And the weird thing, though, is that 3-year-old fish were bigger than them.
Really?
It's like they were stuck. They were stuck in zooplankton eating mode, and they swim together.
Okay.
They school, and I guess they have a school and fidelity for their same cohort, evidently.
Mm-hmm.
So we went back in 2016. Mm-hmm. Now these fish are 8 years old.
Really?
Yeah, and they're still there.
Really?
And they're growing about a half inch more. They're like barely over 8 inches.
My goodness.
And we got 3-year-old fish averaging 12 inches because they had some bad spawns.
Yeah.
Behind the class.
Really?
So the growth curve usually goes like that, you know.
Huh.
This was like up and down because this subset of this year class just refused to.
Really? Just never snapped out of it.
That portion of it, the ones that we collected anyway,
right?
They never transferred over to eating fish.
Really?
It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, just talking about that, it's kind of interesting. I did not realize this because, as a crappie fisherman and not really understanding a lot about the biology, I go out on a lake like High Rock and I think, okay, there's no way there could be a stunted population because there's bait literally everywhere.
I know.
But what's the issue with that? Because
it's the productivity.
Yeah.
So I guess there's so many crappies. Though you see a lot of bait, there's a lot of crappies. Well, and it's got to be bait of the right size.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. So that a little fish can't eat those big, even threadfin shad.
When things are going well, crappies are growing well, they get onto the fish before the shad get too big to eat.
Right.
But if the crappie are behind, they're always behind. They never get where they're big enough.
Yeah.
And then I guess some of them just get set in their ways.
Right, they're just used to eating. Yeah.
That's probably not that common, but I'm just wanting to illustrate it.
Yeah.
That does happen sometimes. But when crappie are doing well, we don't see old fish. When they're really growing gangbusters, and our samples, 5's about old as we see.
About 5 years old.
I mean, I'm sure there's bigger ones that we don't see, right, that are probably offshore doing their thing. But for the most, if we start seeing a bunch of 6, 7, 8-year-old fish, right there's your sign of stunting. And it's obvious because when you're seeing fish that old, they're small.
Okay.
Yeah.
So these fish, even though there's an abundance of bait out there, the smallest ones, like they're only eating the zooplankton. So how big's a crappie usually getting size-wise before it switches over to eating like fish?
About 6 inches.
About 6 inches.
Yep, 6. Yeah.
Okay.
And if they're growing fast, that happens the first year. We catch, like at Blue Falls, I told you they grow pretty dang fast. We'll catch age 0 in the fall because we set nets in the fall. So they were spawned in April, whenever. And they're already 6 inches, close to it.
Wow. Just in a few months.
Wow,
that's cool.
Yep. Our nets won't catch the tiniest fish. They'll just fall through.
Okay.
So you
Gotcha.
You're like a not very bright fish if you manage to get caught in a net that's too big to hold you technically. But you just want to be with their friends, I guess.
Yeah.
But so about 5 inches is the very smallest fish we'll ever see in our nets.
Okay.
But so that's why we don't see age 0s unless they're really growing fast.
They're really growing good.
So we see that at Blue Falls. Yeah, talking about fast growing, so they grow really fast. Say at baiting, and all the ones that are not stunted, they'll get 8 or 9 inches in a year. And then, but after that, it slows down quite a bit. So they might be 9 inches at age 2. And then maybe only 1.5 inches bigger at age 3.
Okay.
So it does slow, but still, that's pretty good. You get 10, 11-inch fish that are 2 plus, 3 years old. That's pretty nice.
And one of the things, and I don't know if folks out there listening or watching, know this, but the way you're aging these crappie, like how are you telling how old they are?
Yeah, it's kind of neat, really. It's we wouldn't be able to do what we do without this, but we age them by a bony structure in their head called an otolith, which means ear stone. And fish have 3 pairs of these, just like we do, hammer, anvil, and stirrup.
Okay.
They're analogous. So
wow.
One set's big enough that you can actually, the other 2 are really tiny.
Okay.
At least in centrarchids, most of the fish we deal with. Catfish, it's a little different, but they have really small ones. Even on a giant fish, a 40-pound catfish will have an otolith about as big around as a 1-year-old crappie.
Okay.
Yeah. So they're a little difficult to read. But so it's basically behind their brain, swelling of their spinal cord. A good biologist can shuck out a pair in about 5 seconds.
Really?
And they're I should have brought some with me. They're they're about half the size of a pinky nail.
Okay.
A big one might be a whole pinky nail.
Right. And
but the beauty is they grow rings like a tree. So
okay, I was going to ask you.
I'm not just hacking them because I like to get covered in blood,
Yeah, I was wondering what all information you can get from them. Is it just the rings per year, or is there more that you can tell from looking at it?
Well, if you're doing a study on very young fish, you can count daily rings. But for what we do annual rings, and they put one down. They call it an annuli, the ring.
So, right.
In the spring, usually they put down a new ring. So if you catch like our bass, we catch them in the spring, we count the outside of the otolith as a year. Because we're assuming that's when and that's when they're born anyway, right? So,
right. Okay.
So the point, but when you just have an otolith, and you kind of need to know when it was collected to age it.
Yeah.
Because on a crappie, it'll be, let's say a 3-year-old fish, there'll be 3 rings that you can see plus the outside, which you don't count. So it's like 3.5.
Okay.
Right. But we just call it 3.
Right. Okay.
But that's critical for us to tell how they're growing, because you can have an 8-inch fish with a crappie. It could be a 1-year-old. It could be 8, 9, 10. Now, I've seen 12-year-old fish. That's old.
Really?
That's super old. But usually we don't see crappies over 8.
Yeah, that would be pretty old for
8's not super uncommon in some of these reservoirs. But we like to see, if it's 5 or less, that's pretty much tells you right away that they're growing pretty good. It's odd how that works.
Okay. Well, let me move on to another question here. This is the $1 million question. I had several people ask me to ask you this. And it was about the
well, I might have an answer and I might not. I don't know.
This is an opinion question. So we've all got opinions.
Even I got an opinion.
Everybody's got opinions, right? So your opinion as a biologist, as far as now we're talking about the Yadkin chain now, the effect of the change a few years ago on the size and creel limit. Has that affected it in a good way, bad way? Is there any talk of putting that back? Or is it working? I mean, just give us your thoughts on that.
I'll be glad to give you my thoughts. It's kind of tricky. It's nuanced too. I'll tell you this: a lot of people, anglers, we're conservation-oriented people, so you get used to having a regulation, and they get hesitant to take them away. They think, you're going to hurt something. So, and I get that. But so it's a lot harder for us to get rid of a regulation than to put a new one on.
Right.
And it could be a restrictive regulation, but anglers say, well, we must need it.
Right.
And a lot of regulations that we have for crappies, they don't seem to work that well. And it's almost like the lake's already producing this size fish, and what kind of length limit can we put on it tucks into what's already naturally happening. So, this lake here can support a 10-inch limit. It's like, well, yeah, it's growing 10-inch fish easily, so, but what do you gain by putting this limit on? You can't keep fish below 10. So now you're increasing competition and probably decreasing growth. So there's a lot more to it. As far as the Yadkin window, here's the other side. So for regulation to work, you need fast growth and you need longevity. The fish needs to live long enough for the restriction to do anything.
Right.
And you need exploitation. You need anglers wanting to catch the fish, keep the fish.
Okay.
But the important part on that is it has to be, they have to want to keep the fish that you're restricting them from keeping.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
So think about an 8-inch limit.
Right. Who wants
you can't
to keep
less than 8.
Yeah.
But who's keeping less than 8?
Right. You can't. I mean, unless you're going to use it for bait for something. There's no meat on it.
So on a population-wide scale, an 8-inch limit's probably not doing anything. So think about that. And I'll tell you this. Crappie recruitment varies. You have good years. You have not so good years. We had 3 great years after the regulation got removed. So I'll get all these calls and everything's going great. This regulation, I'm thinking, yeah, that's cool. I like to think that it's working.
Right.
Because if people would keep 6 and 7-inch fish, it can only help.
Right.
In places like Tillery in 2011, the whole chain had a monster spawn. Okay. Just like mega recruitment. And some of that traces back to high winter rains, like big flows in, say, November, February. And I think that flushes in nutrients.
Okay.
It makes the water more productive.
For the zooplankton?
Yes, exactly. So when the crappie spawn, they got something to eat so they can get onto the shad quicker. But when they have such a big spawn, so it gets confusing then. So they have a big giant, they have too many, I guess a lot of crappies might not make it past the really small stage. But when there's enough productivity early, they get past that hump, the early hump. But now it's the hump between just living a month or two and then getting onto the fish. And then there's so many crappies. So they're stunted. So I guess I'm being long-winded here. But if you can have more harvested 6 and 7-inch fish, those years when you have a giant spawn and recruitment, that can only help growth. So now we come back to the 8-inch limit, though. Right. And I'm thinking, well, so the year classes and everything was going much better, and still is. Ever since it's been changed, we've had great population surveys. It seems like things are improving. But I wonder how much additional harvest are we actually getting of sub 8-inch fish, because that's the only thing we've changed, right? Right. Other than, I guess, the bag limit, which people don't really think about. Right, yeah. But the fact is, well, I shouldn't say fact, because, science and everything can be, everything's fluid somewhat in science. But most studies have shown that if your bag limit, say for crappies, it needs to be really restrictive to make any population difference. So, like single digits. Oh, wow. Like it would be for bass or something like that. Oh, okay. 5 or 6 fish bag limit. Oh. Who's going to accept that for crappies? Right, yeah. And for a number of reasons, it's probably not a good idea. Right. So like a 25 fish bag limit's more of a social construct. It's like, so one angler doesn't get mad that another guy's keeping more fish. You know,
it doesn't have
it's an equalizer on that. But as far as the population's concerned, a 25 fish bag limit could be a 50 fish bag limit. It doesn't really matter. Right. It's neither here nor there. Could be no bag limit.
Right. Which is what, I mean, that's what we've got now on the Yadkin chain.
That's right.
No bag limit.
If you're watching, please catch all and keep all the 6 and 7 inch fish you can at High Rock and
we'll post some recipes.
Yeah, small fish recipes.
Small fish recipes. Yeah.
Well, eat the tails. You know.
Yeah.
They're crunchy.
I'm telling you what. A lot of people think that's crazy, but those things, you fry those up, it tastes like a potato chip.
Yeah.
A fish flavored potato chip. And it's good
sounds
stuff.
Like some Japanese stuff, you know. They always have those fish flavored snacks.
There ain't much that ain't passed over these lips, but I'm telling you, I've eaten a lot of different stuff. But crappie is some good eating fish. But
that's one of the blessings of crappie, you know.
Yeah.
We have a little more of a problem with the bass, largemouth.
Yeah.
Like begging anglers to keep them.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. You know, like these guys with the big bass, like, you know, if you keep a bass and eat it, it's like, oh my goodness, you know. But I mean, I don't know. I eat them. I mean, I'll eat one once in a while. I mean, I don't
shouldn't feel guilty.
I shouldn't feel guilty.
This is our problem. It's kind of the whole Ray Scott thing that he beat it into people.
Catch and release.
Release them, but
yeah. So
bass
we
can benefit too from being harvested, and it's the same situation.
Really,
Tuckertown and High Rock, we got some old, geriatric bass swimming around, and their growth flows way down after 5 or 6. Yeah. 17-year-old. That's the oldest bass.
17 years old. Goodness sakes. It's old enough to drive.
That was Tucker. I know, right?
Man, 17 years old.
Yep. I wish we could get more anglers to keep bass. Because that makes bass rigs basically moot. If nobody's keeping you have to have exploitation. You have to have a desire to harvest for a harvest restriction to work. If nobody wants to keep them, you could make any harvest restriction you want, and it won't matter.
Right. It has to put some pressure on the angling population's actual practices for it to really make any difference. Well, back to crappie for a second. So, kind of on the other, we've been talking about like small fish and recruitment and all that. Let's talk about big fish for a minute. And like, I hear a lot of anglers, and I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, this is what they do with bass. This is what we do down at the coast with the speckled trout. Got to put them big ones back. Okay, you don't keep those big. You know, if you catch a crappie that's 2 pounds, we got to put that thing back because we want to protect that breeding stock. What's your thoughts on that? I mean, would it make sense to take that fish out of the population?
Not really. I think it's neither here nor there, honestly.
Okay.
So I would say do what makes you feel good. But there could be some arguments for releasing the biggest fish if you don't want to keep it. Maybe they have superior genetics. Maybe you want to keep that in the gene pool.
Well, that would make sense. Like there's something special about that fish that it has a quick growth rate, and
they're pretty rare. The ones that break through, so they are the best of the best as far as growth. So there could be something to be said for that. But as far as other than that, it's not going to make a huge difference to the next year's recruitment per se. If
it's just really hard to make a dent in it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, if you can throw back 12 inchers and keep that many more 9 inchers, you're probably helping the population. Just because thinning out where they're crowded will free up more room for them to grow.
What's the biggest crappie that you've seen in all of your studies here? And
probably the biggest ones I've seen were when we opened up the state record for whites, I think it was. But that was angler caught.
Oh, okay.
So basically, our work pales in comparison to what anglers
okay.
can bring in.
Okay.
And I kind of mentioned it before. Our sampling targets the majority. We want a
Right.
representative sample, and
Okay.
those exceptional fish, just the odds of catching one are pretty rare.
And they're gonna.
But let me say, maybe 2.5, 3 pounds.
Oh wow.
Nothing.
Okay.
Maybe not even that. Maybe 2.5.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly.
Okay. I was just curious.
Nothing that a lot of anglers don't catch more every year.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I was just curious if you'd run into any kind of, crazy big,
I've seen 3.5.
Okay. Like angler
The angler caught.
Yeah.
And one of the guys that works with us, one of the depots, so we do habitat work too, and I cut and cabled some large hardwoods. Crappie love brush piles and
Okay.
big old tree. I sunk several of them, I think 20 of them in Tuckertown, but he come up to me and says, I just wanted you to know, I caught a 3.5 pound crappie right on the end of one of those trees he dropped.
Okay.
Yeah, because we marked the trees, to give us a little bit of advertising.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, that's cool.
Oh, that's neat. I didn't realize that you did that. I mean, I knew there was brush piles, but I didn't know y'all had some that you marked with your.
Yeah, I was dropping big, like 90-foot
Big
oaks.
trees.
Yeah, so something that would last.
Okay. Goodness. Yeah, that's. Tuckertown's not somewhere I've fished in a while. Out of that daggum black grass stuff, algae stuff,
man,
is just ridiculous.
Lingbia.
Man.
You know what though? So Lingbia's, I keep bringing up Tuckertown like it's got all these problems,
Right.
Lingbia is a giant problem, at least for fishing. But you know what? The last bass survey we did, they seem to be doing fine. The growth's fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be negatively affecting the bass at all.
Huh.
And they don't seem to be negatively affecting the crappies. The Lingbia, what I'm saying. But
Yeah,
it
it's just
sure is ugly.
Yeah, it's aggravating to fish through and stuff. And yeah. Well,
Yep. Don't be afraid to harvest in some situations. It's,
yeah.
sometimes that's a good thing.
Right. Okay.
But crappie's always been one of my favorite. Well, it is my favorite. I'll just say it's my favorite species because they're so. You never really know what you're going to get. They go up and down. And there's a lot to be gleaned from the information we get from crappies. Bass are pretty linear. You can almost set your clock and dip pretty. They don't change a lot year to year, so it's not as exciting.
Yeah. Well, good.
Yeah,
Well,
I appreciate you having me here,
thank you.
and hopefully I'll answer some questions.
I think you did. We've covered a lot of ground.
It's going to be a good time to be fishing here soon.
I know. I'm ready to get out.
Yeah.
And go hit the lake.
We're hitting the lake in about 3 weeks.
Okay.
We're setting nets at Baden and Tomalex and
Okay.
Lake Norman and Mountain Island. So we have a
You got a
pretty
busy.
full docket. Yep.
Sounds like you got your work cut out for you.
We have so many lakes that I have to do them on a 3-year rotation. So ideally, I would go every single year. Then you could really home in on what's going on.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we don't have the manpower for that.
Yeah.
Because the window's pretty brief. We have about a month to do them.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, good. Well, maybe we'll pick your brain a different time on something else.
Oh, yeah. Be glad to do it.
Pleasure having you with us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.